Thanks, everyone, for joining us for our final pod before Christmas. It's the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. I'm Erik Stenholm with my co-host Joey Moore. The Vikings game just ended. Let's dive right into it. I know we want to delay the inevitable for you with the Niners basically being eliminated with their loss. So let's just do a quick recap of the Vikings and Niners and then get into the playoff picture after a pretty wild Week 15. Monday night, Vikes were a little sloppy, but an overall comfortable win, 30-12. Against the deplorable Bears. I thought Caleb Williams was awful, horribly inaccurate. He was getting hit a lot, as he does every game with how bad that offensive line is. But it's more a product of him just, number one, not being able to get the ball out, in a reasonable amount of time while his receivers are like in stride. And number two, he just is inaccurate and has no idea where he's going with the ball. So it was, a comfortable win for the Vikes. Darnold didn't have the fastball, but he only made that one big mistake on fourth down, which was essentially an arm punt. Defense stood firm. I think we're in good form heading into the final three games. What do you think about the Vikes after that pretty routine Monday night victory?
I thought it was pretty ho-hum. Just took care of business. Chicago's terrible. But, was never in doubt at all. And, love the jerseys, though.
Oh, the Winter Warrior. That's what they're calling
it. Big picture, stay right on the heels of Detroit.
Three-way tie now, Detroit, Philly, and the Vikes for the 1 seed, and it's like...
And I think Detroit's in a bit of trouble. Like, they got hit hard with injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see, but
Vikings finish at Seattle, home Green Bay, at Detroit. So it's, three teams that are probably going to be in the playoffs. So it's a really tough stretch to end the year. But, they won all the games they had to win. You said there was this kind of meaty part of the schedule where it's like, hey, you should be favored in like 6 in a row. Well, we actually won 7 in a row, the 6 in a row in which we were favored. So like that part of the schedule that we circled before the season that we were like, hey, that's actually pretty winnable. We got through it 7-0. So now comes the big part. You got to win on the road against the 12th man, which is always tough. You got to win at home against the hated rival. And then, man, oh man.
Is Geno going to play?
I don't think so, based on the line. The Vikings are favored by 4. So I think that tells me that Vegas thinks Geno isn't going to play. So if you didn't watch the Sunday night game, Sam Howell came in.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my God, was he bad?
Like, I saw. I'll be honest. I saw highlights. I saw one of his. Did he have more than one pick?
I think just one pick, but I was texting with Evan and he completely agreed with me. Have you ever seen anyone ever with less pocket presence than that guy? He just stands, doesn't move, and the pocket collapses on him like a car crash. He doesn't even hit the ground. He just gets sandwiched between like 7 guys, like 3 different times. I'm like, this looks like a guy who hasn't practiced in like a year. So if it's Howell, I really like the Vikings.
Geno Smith has his detractors, but like if you that could have been a loud sneeze.
He's at least 5 to 7 point swing from him to the backup. He's a very good, quarterback compared to his backup for sure.
Like he's just talked about bridge, and it's like, well, if your bridge going nowhere, Sam
Howell ain't no bridge. No, we'll get into the Vikings Seahawks preview in a little bit, but good on the Vikes for we won 5 in a row to start the year. We lost two games in 5 days, and then we've won 7 in a row now. So 12-2. We were projected to win 6 games at the start of the season. So to be 12-2, just got to finish business here. If we get to a point where all we have to do is win 2 home playoff games to get to the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, it's going to be one of the best coaching jobs in recent NFL history by Kevin O'Connell. So good on him. Quick Niners. I don't want to call it an autopsy yet, but it's the end of the road. It's over in 2024 for the Niners. They went out with a whimper, but tire fire off the field yet again with the whole DeVondre Campbell fiasco. Kyle Shanahan looks like he's completely lost patience with a lot of these guys. Thought it was pretty shocking to see Debo get booed severely by the fans almost all game. And then obviously all this locker room strife that comes out between Campbell and a bunch of other guys after the game. So, all the reporting is that they're going to stay the course like they did after their disastrous 2020 season. Purdy due for an extension. They may hold off, is some of the reporting, until after next season. After that crushing Thursday night loss in what was just a terrible game. What are your thoughts on the Niners as we head towards 3 games that probably don't matter?
Yeah, well, the DeVondre Campbell thing is a whole situation in itself, but it's just, a tale as old as time. If you're a player and you request demand, I don't want to say demand. He earned the money, Deebo Samuel did, but you get that, and then your production just starts. And then this year's just been. I saw something that said he has as many receiving touchdowns as that Detroit offensive lineman.
Dan Skipper. Yeah.
Come on, man. And then the other stuff doesn't even work. Sum it up. Number one, his drop. That's a touchdown. You look at it, Kittle looks like he's already blocking. He scores.
Mm-hmm.
And one touchdown might have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
As sack of shit as this season has been, if he catches the ball and scores and they win this game,
Seattle lost.
Some of these games matter.
Yeah.
You could conceivably go to Miami and win. If you play well. Do you beat Detroit at home? I don't know. They're going to need probably even more injuries, but at least see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Catch the ball. Twitter puts him in a casket midweek. Sends in I saw that. It looked like you're struggling. He's like, nah, just not getting the ball. Okay. And yeah, I think I watched Niners post game. They're like, this is not a booing town. This isn't Philly, New York. But it was loud. You can hear it on the TV. That just dude. And then we're not even mentioning the first or second play of the game. They were in a simple inside zone, and he mistimed. I don't know his fault. I'll blame him until I hear otherwise. Mistimes the motion and hip checks the running back.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners run motion almost as much as any team in the league. We practiced this before. What happened?
It's an inexcusable season from him where this kind of performance, a key drop on what could have been a touchdown, bad timing on a jet sweep, all this stuff. It's if it happened this game, it's one thing. It's been happening all season with him, and it's clear that he kind of got paid and then just kind of.
Oh, and we also haven't mentioned he punched the long snapper.
Yeah.
Someone should have punched him.
He's supposed to be probably your team leader, of everybody.
He's one of them. He's a voted team captain. It's up until this year. And again, if he gets cut or whatever, I don't know. I will look his time as a Niner incredibly fondly. This is not going to, put a cloud over the big picture, but this year's been a complete disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he wasn't as well liked as he was by not just his teammates, but I think Kyle really. I think that they are. There's a lot of respect there. I think Kyle would have buried somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on?
The other discourse that's come out of that game, other than obviously the Rams now being in the driver's seat for the West and really having a good shot to get the 3 seed, would be, I think the national media and some of the local Bay Area media are turning on Purdy just a little bit, to the point where they're like, do we need to do this extension after this season? And should we push that into, after his 4th season, maybe let him test free agency, or should they, try to lock him up now? Because right now it seems like it was 100% going to happen after maybe 5 weeks this season. Right now it's maybe in the 60-40 range.
It's going to be an all-timer in terms of negotiation, because you've never seen a guy go from minimum wage to a humongous contract potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was super weird because, the media is just reporting things that agents and management say to them. There's no insider. Someone's telling them to put this out. And I don't know, maybe not because you're not an Irish fan, but I get the rumor mill just notification on my phone. Mm-hmm. It's Purdy's taking top dollar. That came out at a very weird time. It's you just had because you're already starting, like you said, hearing about it, and then like the next day, someone said, I think Schefter reported like, hey, hearing that the Niners might wait another year, and it's like this back and forth of like, what is the number? I have no clue, because you could do a lot worse than Brock Purdy. Could you do, I'm not gonna say a lot better, but could you do clearly better? Oh, heck yeah. What's the number? I mean, the thing is like, what's the number? I'd have a hard time.
It's one of those
more
that, you would think, okay, 4 years at 45 per, you would sign that right now. 4 years at 58 per, there's no way in hell you would sign that right now. So it's like that kind of difference where,
like, Sam Darnold doing what he's doing doesn't help.
Right. Because then you look at it and you go, why not grab Daniel Jones, who's learning under Kevin O'Connell right now?
Then again,
10 million.
He would point to like, well, Jimmy's career is MIA.
Yeah.
Like he came after, Trey Lance can't do it. I guess you could argue both sides, but yeah, it's just
not
crazy.
A discussion at all until these last 4 or 5 weeks. It's been he basically through, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks of this season. You're looking at a guy who, other than Tom Brady, has like the highest winning percentage for anyone that's ever played 2+ seasons in the NFL. He was something like, 33-5 as a starter, some ridiculous thing. And now all of a sudden we're like, hey, wait a minute. Like maybe it was just an all-time roster that this guy got to play.
It's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's crazy because he's absolutely earned to be paid more, whatever that number is, whether it's $5 an hour or what the millions that we're talking about. He's earned more than Tua. He should get more than Trevor Lawrence.
Dak Prescott too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would absolutely think he should. In terms of like, does he deserve that? Do the Niners need to do that? No. Because they're all dumb contracts. Doesn't mean you have to do a dumber contract. So, yeah, I don't know.
Remains to be seen. That's going to be probably our biggest talking point on our off-season pod after the Super Bowl. So we'll get there when we get there. But sad end to the Niners season. A lot of drama there. Obviously, we'll get into the DeVondre Campbell situation here in a little bit. Other major storylines from Week 15. Detroit's defense is in crisis. They gave up 48 points. Probably could have given up more, but Buffalo called off the dogs a little bit at the end. So many injuries. Aleem McNeil and David Montgomery are now out for the season. So that's now their entire starting defensive line is out for the season. They're starting running back out for the year as well. Detroit at 12-2, clearly, if you look at point differential, if you just look at the eye test, they've been the best team in the NFL this season. But you got to think at some point there's enough injuries there to where the NFC is now wide open, and it really might be Philly and the Vikings to lose if this continues for Detroit.
Yeah, shoot, it really sucks because I think roster-wise and their play the whole season, especially if they had Aiden Hutchinson too. I think they are the best team in the NFC. I think, but that doesn't win.
We're talking 49ers level of, hey, everyone on our defense is hurt.
Well, they're having the same problem the Niners have had. Is like they play, and honestly, you could argue they play even a more bruising style because their offensive line is so big and big, fast. Great offensive line, way better than any offensive line the Niners ever had. But you get injured playing that way. Like, the tough running the football, and they throw it like they're not as like, super hardcore, like running like the Niners with Kyle sometimes, but attrition sets in, and Aleem McNeil is a huge loss. David Montgomery, I think doesn't get, probably the respect he deserves.
Think back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons and just,
eventually catches up with you. Eventually catches up with you. And we'll see. They probably maybe hang on for the one. Maybe I don't know.
They get the ultimate get-right spot at Chicago this week. If they come out in that game and say Caleb Williams puts up 30 points on them, we officially have a full-on crisis there. But if they, as expected, say they go in there and win, 31-13 or something, then you're like, okay.
Well, they probably win their next 2 games, right?
at Chicago and at the Niners. Not exactly like the easiest 2-game stretch ever, but very easy compared to what they've been playing recently.
And what, you guys go Seattle and
at
then
Seattle, home Green Bay. So it's a tougher stretch for us, but at least one of them's at home. Yeah.
So you'd have to win them both to keep pace. So that last game.
And obviously the Lions won the first game, so they have the tiebreaker in that regard, but they only have one conference loss and we have 2. So with any loss, if we lost to Seattle or Green Bay,
you'd have to finish with a better record.
Yes, exactly. Or, we would need Detroit to lose. I believe they would need to lose to both, and we would need to win both. Yeah, so that's not going to happen. So, it's going to come down to week 18. I think the only scenario where it doesn't is, say, Detroit wins both, we lose both, and it's already over. But it's going to come.
Even given that, if they win both of them,
we have to win both. But I really think the Niners will put up a good fight on Monday.
Then it'd be the same record. Oh yeah, then you would. Okay, yeah. So it'd be. I keep
and that's the thing too is Philly's sitting there going, hey, they have 2 conference losses just like the Vikings. So it looks like based on strength of victory, if the Vikings win out, they get the 1 seed. If Detroit wins out, they get the 1 seed. If Philly wins out, they probably need a loss by either the Vikings or Lions, whoever.
Philly probably has an easy finish given their division.
They play at Washington.
The whole division.
They play at Washington, then Giants and
Cowboys. Dallas and the Giants at home.
So they have to lose the Washington game for the Vikings and Lions to be like in the clear for the 1 seed because they're going to win their other 2. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Actually, let's just talk about Philly now. I mean, they've won 10 in a row. They're the hottest team in the league. The Vikings have won 7 in a row. I'm like, that's awesome. I can't believe Philly's won 10 in a row. Basically, they capped Barkley's carries in this game. He sat out for like 40-50% of the game. He only ended up getting like 17 touches. They still win by 2 scores. Steelers are who we thought they were, man.
I texted you. I was like, oh, Aaron Andrews is just reported. Yeah, there's no injury. He's just sitting here. I'm like, huh? But yeah,
but then you watch the game and you go, hey, it makes sense. You're ahead by 2 touchdowns. I believe he was on pace for 400 and something carries. So they're probably like, if there was ever a time to gear him down a little bit, this is it. The Steelers had no offense.
I liked Pittsburgh. I don't, but yeah, Phillies, yeah. But for being such a good team, boy, is there a lot of noise. And holy smokes, the only team that I've ever heard of a big Dom or a big Brad or big Chad Brad, like why is it the only sideline that like they're fighting? I didn't see till today.
And
one of the coaches is like face to face with Sirianni.
Yeah. Sirianni clearly runs a program that's okay with a lot of drama. Like lots of coaches in the NFL, John Harbaugh comes to mind, Mike Tomlin comes to mind. That shit never happens, but with Sirianni it does. I mean, that's just an Italian type thing.
It feels like I'm watching like some like just family owned Philly like cheesesteak business, and they're like arguing over the mayo and mustard on some like sandwich, and like 2 of the 2 brothers or cousins are just getting into it, and it's like at the end of the day, like
did it not feel a little small time for both AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts in their post game press conference to be like, is that what y'all wanted to see?
Yeah,
like, come on.
I don't know whose thing I saw. Someone was like, well, like, all the media caused some, like, I think AJ Brown said something like the media caused this. And some reporter was like, we didn't, you told us.
Your guy. Yeah, Brandon Graham told everybody.
But no, it was way before Brandon. It was like.
Yeah. Well, AJ Brown, last week, they're like, what do you need to improve after that game where they struggled? Who was it against Carolina? Passing? He goes passing. We've struggled at passing. We need to pass it better. I'm like, woof. So like they bring this on themselves. However, despite all the drama, they've won 10 in a row. That was a very convincing victory against the Steelers. They got the ball with 10 minutes and 10 seconds left in the game and closed it out. A 10-minute, 10-second drive was pretty impressive.
I could be wrong, but did I read it correctly that Vic Fangio has turned this 32nd ranked defense into the first ranked defense in the NFL?
I believe they are in yards. I don't know if it's total, like with scoring, but in yards, yes. And obviously it's got a lot to do with what he's doing. but they're a
partially him.
Baltimore.
They got 2 first-round talent corners. They took DeJean in the second, but yeah, I mean,
It's been a hell of a
they somehow
turnaround.
get the 1 seed with the bye, and then like that place outdoors, like in some kind of weather for either Detroit or Minnesota,
And just push it on every play, which is just, I can see it coming. Hopefully they're the 2 and they have to go to whoever wins the North, but we'll see. Of the other big stories, we'll just go through them real quick. Here's my note. Mahomes may miss multiple weeks. Does it even matter? Like, they're 13-1. He's probably, I guess he's almost guaranteed to miss this week. He may come back, but it's a short week against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. I feel like they just sit him the next
Netflix paid
2
all
weeks.
this money to see Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz's return to Pennsylvania against no. With him, I feel like that's like every December, Mahomes hurts his ankle or his foot, and it's like a question as we go into the playoffs. It's like a tradition. But I don't think it even matters. I think they're going to be 14-3, 15-2, something like that, and be the 1 seed regardless.
Are they 2 games ahead of Buffalo?
2 games ahead of Buffalo. Buffalo does have the tiebreaker, but I mean, basically all they need to do is beat, I think, either Denver or Houston, and we all know they'll weigh into one of those. So
Carson Wentz will look like MVP Carson Wentz and be like, damn it, they did it again.
Yeah, Andy Reid's going to resurrect yet another career. That would be insane if they beat Houston this week and then beat Pittsburgh after that and go 16-1. Speaking of Houston, they clinched the division. They eliminated Miami essentially by winning that game. Not an overly impressive performance, but I do think that basically us writing off the Texans after a few lackluster performances may have been a little bit premature. Obviously, they're well behind the Baltimore and Kansas City and Buffalo group, but they clinched their division with 3 weeks to play. Good on them. DeMeco Ryans back-to-back unbelievable performances as head coach there, so we got to give a tip of the cap to them. And then obviously probably the biggest story to come out of last night's game is the Rams now control the NFC West after the Seattle loss. The Seahawks looked awful. Geno got hurt. The Packers basically just ran the ball down their throat the whole night, and I think it showed the blueprint for how to beat Seattle. So I think Seattle's days are numbered there as a playoff contender. They have a tough schedule coming in with the Vikings and the Rams. They do go to Chicago for a Thursday night game, but I'm thinking 1 and 2 down the stretch for them. So they're in big trouble there.
Seattle, Chicago, Thursday night. Oh.
Day after Christmas. Big fun one, huh? Yeah, that's a pretty crummy one. Especially if Geno plays, it's like maybe it's okay. If it's Sam Howell against Caleb Williams, oh boy. They're supposed to be allowed to flex 2 Thursday night games this year, and they've only done it once, and it was this week where they put Denver and the Chargers in.
What was it supposed to be?
It was supposed to be it was like Dolphins Browns or something, or no, this week I can't remember what it was. It was something terrible, something involving Dallas, I'm sure. All right, let's get into the Week 16 preview. Vikings at Seahawks, the Stenholm Bowl. There hasn't been a bigger one since the playoff game with the Blair Walsh missed field goal a decade ago. Both teams tied for first in their division. It feels like if the Vikings lose this one, they're probably out for the 1 seed and very likely out for the division. If the Seahawks lose this one, I would imagine that the Rams take care of business against the Jets, and the Rams basically put themselves in a position to win the division next week. So this is a huge one. If Geno is out, I like the Vikings to win big here with how bad Sam Howell was on Sunday Night Football. If Geno is in, and it seems like, if he has any chance of going, he has to play here in a must-win spot. This is the kind of team that the Vikings struggle with. You got 3 really good wide receivers and a quarterback who pushes the ball down the field. The Vikings' one weakness, I would say, on defense is corner, and we get torched by teams like the Rams who have a potent passing attack. So looking at that game, is it really as simple as if Geno's in, the Seahawks are competitive? If he's not, the game's over?
Yeah. I hate that quarterback has that much impact on it, but yeah, there's Sam Howell. They have no chance.
It's insane. Did you know Sam Howell started all 17 games for Washington last year? I had completely forgotten about him. He went 4-13. He got sacked 68 times, which is like third most all time by any quarterback in a season. I was like, that makes sense. Like,
He probably is out of the league next year.
yeah, he was never meant to be a starter in the league. So, for Evan's sake, I hope Geno makes it back and the Seahawks have a shot in this game. But as a Vikings fan, I'm like, hey, we got a Super Bowl shot here. Sorry for having to steamroll.
Sorry, Evan.
Sorry, we got to steamroll whoever's ahead of us in the schedule. All business from here on out. And then a quick Niners preview. They're at Miami. Both teams 6-8. Both teams heading toward an offseason of major change. Possibility that Miami fires their head coach,
Really?
Mike McDaniel, who
You think so?
I think Miami fans have soured. He's now they just showed 1-15 against winning teams as a head coach. Like that to me shows that like he's a guy who can't play up to the competition. He's always, putting up big numbers with the Tua-led offense against the really bad teams. When they play a good team, they really have no shot. And I mean, not a lot to say about this game other than two teams that are just barely hanging on by a thread.
I'm playing for next year. Wouldn't be upset if we lost. I mean, I don't know what it's. I was thinking about it. The Niners it's been a while since.
Because in 2020, how far back were you at the end of the season? Behind, I guess that would have been the Seahawks went like 12-4 that year.
Oh, I think our season. I remember that because that was when we got booted to Arizona, and I remember we played a home game against Buffalo in Arizona on like Monday Night Football or something, and I remember that being early December and was like, I think this is it. And then they ended up going to Dallas later, and like Nick Mullins played pretty well, and I think they lost to Dallas like 40-30. I mean, it was I don't know, but it wasn't like a couple. It was more than a couple.
It's been a long time since there was a garbage Niner game.
Nothing. Like that's it. It's it's a good thing because it's obviously a testament to how well they've done. But yeah, I mean, what a weird feeling.
Yeah, I've been used to it. I had it last year and in 2021 as well, where it's like the last.
And trust me, this is worse.
Yeah,
because like.
You were a Super Bowl contender coming into the
year.
No,
I don't mean that. I don't mean like it's worse like that. I'm saying it's worse than like because we both had our fair share of teams like in different sports that like this is it. Like you better like to lose when to lose a big playoff game. Like you think you're like, man, I wish I would have just like sucked all year because there's so much pain and heartbreak. You're just like, why'd I even do this? Waste. No, what's worse is like you have a game coming up this weekend and you're like, wow, it means nothing.
Yes. The sports fans' absolute nightmare where you're like, this thing that I look forward to every weekend, now that doesn't even.
And then like you're so like, into it, you're just like, not only do I not, I hope we lose. Because like that benefits us more. Which
it's a whole nother level to it where it's like you're tanking to see if you can pick the 11th instead of 17th.
Like I could maybe, get myself all fired up if it was like maybe a game we could like knock Seattle out of the playoffs or something. Or like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
We're playing Miami.
Like Detroit when they could screw Green Bay a few years ago. Yeah. You're like, okay, we're gonna end their season. Like I like that.
Like that Dan Campbell, what did he say? He's like, if we're not going to the playoffs, neither are they.
Yeah. Yeah, those you can get up for. This one is just And it theoretically, I mean, before the season, this would have been an awesome game. Kyle going against his former protege with both teams like playoff bound, but it's a rough one now. Miami favored by 1.5 in that one. Actually, it's down to 1. Let's go to some marquee games for next week. You got Denver at the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. That's a decent game. Chargers were really sliding. I kind of like Denver +3 in that game. It's not going to make my picks, but Houston at Kansas City was going to be a marquee game. Based on the line, Houston favored by 3. They are certain that Mahomes is out for this one. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Pittsburgh is catching 7, and I kind of want to take Pittsburgh there, just being like, that's a lot of points for a short week divisional game. And then the one game that I would say, other than, Vikings Seahawks, which is my big game of the week, the one that I would say is like super watchable is Philly at Washington. Philly favored by 3.5 on the road. Any thoughts on those? I mean, I think obviously a lot of people are going to be rooting for Washington to knock off Philly's win streak there.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, it's a big game for Washington. It's a big game. I think. Pittsburgh Baltimore game's a big one. And
Baltimore
whether
a
or not,
game back now. One game
yeah,
back. Yeah.
and like whether or not Mahomes plays or not, like especially having them in my AFC title game, the Houston Texans, like let's see something.
Good spot for them.
Like, they're going to go to the playoffs. Well, they won the division, go to the playoffs based maybe mostly on the fact their division is crap.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was supposed to be, they're clearly at least a tier, if not 2 tiers below, like Buffalo, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Baltimore.
And a lot of that has to do with injuries. They lost Diggs for the year and a few defensive players, but it's like, if they were ever going to show us something, this would be the game. They got to go in and they got to win by 2 touchdowns against Carson Wentz.
And it's a Saturday game, right?
It is. It's early too. It's 10 a.m. Saturday, so that's essentially like a Thursday night
That's crazy
type situation.
Because isn't it the college football playoff Saturday too?
The NFL said, "Screw you, college. We own every day of the week." Their games are at 10 and 1:30, the NFL, and the college football playoff games are at like 9, 12.
Aren't they on TNT too?
The
playoff?
Yeah.
I think the night game when there's no NFL is the Tennessee Ohio State.
Yes, and that'll be a good one. And then I think the Notre Dame Indiana game is actually the day before. Yeah, so that one will get good ratings. But I do like Notre Dame in that game, -7, by the way. Let's go to Joey's Jack in the Bum of the Week. Obviously, this is like one of the biggest ones of all time, and we all know who he's going to pick. We all know who everyone who has a podcast is going to pick this week. But let me just contrarianly give you some other options here. Jonathan Taylor did that thing that we're seeing a lot more in the NFL this year where you celebrate like an 1/8 of a second before you cross the goal line and drop the ball. Cost his team a touchdown, ended up costing them the game. They would have been up by 10 points had he just walked into the end zone. They end up losing by 10 points. It's like, man, oh man, especially from a former all-pro player, borderline Hall of Fame trajectory of his career after 2 or 3 seasons. That kind of player, you don't expect to see that from. Really unbelievable from Jonathan Taylor, and obviously Shane Steichen chewed him out on the sideline. Pretty unbelievable. Aaron Glenn is on this list. I know he doesn't have a lot to work with, but every week when I watch Detroit now, I just see a defense that's getting out-coached, outmanned.
He would be like, we are outmanned.
He's like, we are outmanned. I don't have anybody to work with. But, that's now, what, 3 out of the last 4 weeks that Detroit's had to score 40-plus to have any chance. So it's like, their performance, I thought, against Green Bay was almost as bad as this one this week against Buffalo. So they really got to turn things around there. I think a more adept defensive coordinator would have come up with some kind of scheme. And it's like, Buffalo could have scored 60 if they really put the pedal to the metal, but they had such a big lead they kind of let off there. So really bad from them. Tua has to be on the list. Not only did he have 3 picks and just play an overall awful game, he threw 2 what Kurt Warner used to call hospital balls. One of them, literally, the poor wide receiver for Miami got knocked out and was down on the field for like 15 minutes. He's still in the hospital today, almost 48 hours later. Tua's just the king of just putting his receivers in bad positions like that. He did the same thing to Waddle like 5 plays before he did it to the other guy. So it's like, man, oh man, is he struggling right now? He had, 3 or 4 great games in a row, and then the last 2, it's just like, man, he just throws these passes that put his receivers in danger. And then the late ad here, Antonio Pierce. Once it looked like the Vikings game was decided, I did the double box with the Raider game. And that's the worst coach team in the league, way worse than the Giants. The offense couldn't get plays in. There was a hold on almost every offensive, drop back. The Raiders are the worst team in the league, and he's going to get fired, and deservedly so. But Joey, the floor is yours for the most obvious Jack in the Bum of the Week in the history of the podcast.
You actually make a strong case for, I think, Antonio Pierce. Maybe just the Raiders as a whole, because, I don't know, just watching a little bit tonight, and I was watching tonight, I was like, I barely watched any Raiders football at all. I'm like, there's just nothing going on at all. And you look at your division, I think said last week, you have 3 Hall of Fame coaches. You could hire a really good coach, and he might be the 4th best, whatever.
They could hire Belichick; he'd be the 4th best in that division right now.
No, anyone could have hired him. But, okay. That's a whole other whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's only one option this week. It's DeVondre Campbell Sr.
We'll spare Junior this week.
It's weird what happens to your team. And then it came out today that John Lynch was the guy that chewed him out and sent him to the locker room, which he probably went back to his playing days and was just like, what the hell is going on? And I mean, to do that, the premeditated, just bum ass move is, you can be all mad about it, but if you're him, how does this benefit him in his career? One iota. He universally, like you said, every podcast, TV show, wherever, how do you sign him? How do you have him on your team?
I think his thought was by doing this,
he had to know this was going to happen.
His thought was that he would get cut and get to go somewhere else. And John Lynch was like, no, you're suspended the rest of the year, so you don't get to play for anybody. And I love that move.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely. But again, he had to know you're risking that.
Yeah.
And you already came with baggage. Number one, you were not the Niners' first choice. Eric Kendricks was their first choice. He got us, I think, a similar, better offer from Dallas. He's like, I don't have to worry about. He's like, I don't want to be a guy who's just holding the seat warm for Dre Greenlaw. He's like,
he wanted to play with Mike Zimmer.
Great, no problem with that. They signed DeVondre Campbell Sr., who they threw a lifeline because he was just shit talking the Packers because he went from an all-pro to he would say misuse, coaches, blame everyone else. Come to Niners, again, wasn't there. Had to imagine, hey, man, we're signing you. Dre Greenlaw comes back, you're on the bench. Had to be.
Or you'll be in on nickel packages or something.
Did it even had to be said? I mean, you had to know. Did you think you were as good as – I mean, just look at the one game. The one game, Drake Greenlaw came back. The Rams struggled to run the ball. I think he had 9 or 10 tackles, and then started to get sore. Didn't want to push it, so they need Campbell to go in. He don't want to go in, and then they're playing a hurt D Winners because they literally have no one else. And that's when Kyron Williams really gets going.
Yeah,
popping off runs, and it's I mean, I'm all for if he played all pro level while Dre Greenlaw was out, I'd be okay, you deserve to stay. I could see you being a little pissed off, but you didn't. You were arguably one of the worst players on defense the whole year, especially in coverage.
The main point that most of the talk shows have been making is obviously you've seen a lot of these clips recently. Your first round pick was shot and played 8 weeks later.
Oh, yeah.
Your star defensive back lost his child and then played 4 weeks later. You had another, player lose his child and played 3 weeks later. You have guys playing through broken ankles with Warner, and they do everything they can to get on the field. And you refuse to go in out of ego. It's the worst look you could ever imagine. By the way, in my little bit of research on the guy after this whole situation blew up, he was a rookie on the 2016 Falcons. If you watch the end of the Super Bowl, everybody talks about 28-3 and Edelman's catch or whatever. The Patriots are looking at a field goal in overtime if he doesn't commit just an egregious pass interference to basically set up a 2-yard touchdown for the Patriots to win the Super Bowl.
No way.
It's one of the great forgotten plays. I just searched him and I was like, oh, he was on the 2018 Falcons. And if you look at the Super Bowl, the third to last play of the game, he caused a pass interference that essentially gave the Pats the ball on the goal line to win the Super Bowl. So it's wow, this guy has been just crushing his own team for his entire career.
I mean, and I'm not surprised because, as bad as the season has gone, I never once questioned, the locker room, team chemistry, any of that. Because, universally, immediately, post-game, the players are like, this is just terrible. in the words of Javarius Ward, some sucker shit. That's what it is. Some sucker shit.
And for players to side with the GM, the coach, the ownership instead of one of their fellow players, that's how you know it's like horrendous.
But when you do that, you're not one of us.
Exactly.
And I couldn't imagine, maybe it did, maybe it won't, maybe it will never come out. I wouldn't be shocked. Well, he probably left and then left the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he's there post game, I bet a fight happens.
Oh yeah. Why even have the pads on, by the way? Why not say something?
That's what everyone was saying, because it was premeditated. He wanted this to be a Broadway play.
Yeah. Unacceptable. This is the first time since.
How do you think this would benefit you?
Do you remember Vontae Davis? I think he was the corner for.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the first time since then.
He passed away, didn't he?
He unfortunately has since passed away, but he I believe he retired halfway through a game.
You know what? At least he retired. He's like, no, man, I'm not quitting I'm quitting on everything. I'm done.
And I think when they interviewed him later, he was like, I realized I can't play anymore. And I said, I'm killing this team. And he just left the stadium, never played.
He wasn't asked hey, man, we need you to go in. We're hurt. We're down bodies. He probably was just like, hey, man, I'm terrible. I'm done.
Yeah. This is just a whole nother can of worms.
It is. Player got shot. 2 players had their children pass away. Your position leader, team leader, Fred Warner's playing with a broken ankle almost all year.
It's pouring rain. Nobody wants to be there. And
Christian McCaffrey went to Germany to try and fix his Achilles.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get something Deebo Samuel's just ass. And
Ayuk tore his ACL. The whole situation is just an absolute disaster. But every one of those 52 other guys has given everything they have to this team. And then he goes and pulls a stunt like this.
It's wild.
It's not a bad look. It is the worst look of any player.
I thought about this. I was like, you know who probably was really happy this happened? I've totally forgotten Anthony Richardson.
Oh, subbing out. Yep. He was awful in the Denver game, but I digress.
isn't that crazy?
Just how things get forgotten so
Campbell's
quickly.
Is worse, so much worse. But really, what actually is worse? Probably Richardson, because you took him in the top 5 of the NFL. Campbell, who cares? You're on a 1-year deal.
He's a scrappy linebacker. Yeah,
your starting quarterback just said, "Oh man, I'm tired, dude."
Unbelievable.
I can't believe it. I can't believe this stuff. You get off my lawn, older, probably NFL guys, oh, back in my day, we were hitting players, and
Ronnie Lott cut off his finger so he could keep playing.
It's you know what? This one, they got a point. This wouldn't have happened.
Oh yeah, you kidding me? Imagine Belichick's the coach. He'd be like, I put out a memo to the rest of the league to never sign him again. He'll never play in this league again. And Shanahan is just like, yeah, never seen that before.
But essentially, that's what they did. Look at John. They were like, hey, let's be calm. We're not going to cut him. We're going to just basically ruin his career.
Yeah. Unacceptable. One of the craziest situations in recent football history. DeVondre Campbell, Joey's enormous Jack in the Bum of the week.
This is an all-timer.
An all-timer.
Mount Rushmore.
And it's not I'm
trying to think. Jacoby Myers.
Right. Joseph Osai.
You could even argue Anthony Richardson. That one too.
I think that's the Mount Rushmore. Although Urban Meyer was on there 5 or 6 times too. Trevor Lawrence has been on there 3 or 4 times. But most egregious. This has got to be it. Let's go to the You Like That picks of the week. We are now 42-29-4 on the season. We had another winning week. We went 3-2 with the Rams, Houston, and Philly. We lost with Detroit and Seattle. So 3-2 up to 42-29-4 on the season. I'm going to take Pittsburgh +7 at Baltimore on the Saturday game. It's just too many points in a divisional game on a short week. I'm going to take Detroit, Chicago over 46.5. I have seen enough with the Lions. I officially think their defense is bad moving forward. They're just too injured. I think even this craptastic, Chicago offense can put up points on them. And obviously Detroit's going to put up points on the sorry Bears. I think that one's going to be something 30-3 23-24, something like that. It's going to be a high scoring game. I like the Rams -3 at the Jets. Joey, this is our final chance, maybe ever, to bet against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. Like, can't wait for it. Can't wait to bet a lot of money on the Rams here. I can't believe they're only favored by 3 here. They're so much better than the Jets. I'm taking Miami, and I'm running out of picks here. There's 5, I got to pick 5. There's 16 games, and like 7 of them suck. So I'm like, just give me Miami -1 at home against probably a relatively lethargic and injured Niners team. And then the Tampa Bay Dallas Sunday night football game. I've seen this over the last few weeks from Dallas. McCarthy just wants to muck these games up and just run the ball, have Cooper Rush throw play action passes, and just keep it low scoring. I think Tampa will do everything they can to score points in that game, but I still think it's going to be like maybe a Tampa like 23-17 victory, something like that. So give me Pittsburgh +7, Detroit, Chicago over 46.5, Rams -3, Dolphins -1, and Tampa Bay, Dallas under 48.5. For the You Like That picks of the week for NFL Week 16. Joey, it's time for your Feels Great Baby, your wildest take you feel best about currently. Where are you taking us?
Well, I kind of want to talk about it a little earlier, but I think Detroit is in big trouble. Like my hot take is I think they get passed by Philly. We talked about the math. I think just Minnesota's got a hard time catching them. I mean, with the tiebreakers and stuff. So I still think Detroit gets that 2 seed, but I think they'd lose to whoever the 7 seed is. Like I even that game at home. I mean, are they going to get like
Washington or Green Bay? One of the two, and they're not going to stop their offenses. I know that.
I would not want Green Bay. Green Bay looks like really good.
Green Bay's first drive last night, they had, 11 plays, and 10 of them were to Jacobs. Easy touchdown. Was like
Jacobs is a guy I always liked him with the Raiders, and I thought going from Aaron Jones to him was a lateral move. Like, I liked Aaron Jones. He's an upgrade. Like, and he's mean too. Like, I don't know, personally, I don't know if I've ever talked, but like when the Niners played him, I'm like, dude, like this guy finishes every run. And then when it's freaking cold in Lambeau, like,
obviously nowhere near the talent and size, but a Derrick Henry type profile where it's like you want him in cold weather because he just runs into dudes and hits them.
It's not fun to tackle him, I would assume, but I think Detroit's in trouble. I think David Montgomery's a big loss.
You said McNeil. I mean,
McNeil's a huge loss. It's back. He's a really good player. I wanted the Niners to, I don't know about get him, but I wanted a player like him. Put in the middle of the defense.
By the way, Montgomery and McNeil both signed contract extensions in season this year with Detroit, and both are now out for the year with possible injuries that could linger into next year. Pretty crazy situation there.
But yeah, I think Detroit. I don't think. My scorching hot take is they lose in the first round. I mean, I think they probably still beat Washington, but
if they get Green Bay.
If they get Green Bay, look out, and like they're not going to win a second one. I don't think they're beating potentially Green Bay, Minnesota, whoever.
If I have to rank the NFC for best chance to win the conference right now, Philly is obviously number 1. Is Detroit number 2, or is it the Vikings at this point, or is it Green Bay even? I mean, I wouldn't put Green Bay there. I'd probably put the Rams. And then maybe Green Bay, and then Tampa, something like that. But
I think Minnesota's probably the second best team behind Philly, but like their path's going to be hard.
You have to win the game at Detroit in Week 18, or you're probably not going to get anywhere near the Super Bowl because then you'd have to win 3 road games to get there, and it's not going to happen. Like Minnesota, like I mean, your path becomes
if you got to go back to LA.
It's like at Rams or at Tampa, followed by at Philly, followed by at Detroit. It's like, man, would that be tough?
That's I'm trying to think, like who was it? I think I was just watching the college football playoff thing, and like Oregon, like they were undefeated 1 seed, and like the way the bracket goes, they're like, wait a minute, we got to beat like potentially Ohio State, and then we'd have to beat like Texas or something. Like, meanwhile, like Boise State plays like, or like Penn State could beat SMU, go play Boise, and it's just like, wait a minute, we got like had this, and like if you're Minnesota, you're like, wait, we go like maybe like 15-2 or like 14, whatever it is. And like you mean to tell me like our path to the Super Bowl is like at Rams, at Detroit, at Philly?
That's
Damn.
the NFL, man. And this is why we love it, though. Like in basketball, the first 2 rounds wouldn't even be watchable. In the NFL, you can have a 14-3 team playing in round 1, and it's must-see
I mean,
TV.
I would say you'd probably rather play at Tampa, but I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, Tampa's sneaky won a lot of playoff games.
Mm-hmm. And Baker's looked really good yet again. No, I like that take about the Lions. Their defense is just absolute dog shit right now, not because of, any sort of Dan Campbell shortcoming. It's a bad defensive coordinator, a very bad roster because their top maybe 6 of their top 7 defensive players are out for the season. Like,
did Brian Branch play?
He did, and he got torched. Anzalone's out for the year. McNeil's out for the year. Hutchinson's out for the year. Their starting safety is out for the. It's just like the attrition has killed them. So I like that take that the Lions are going to fall off here. Appreciate everybody listening. We got to wrap up here. Got to close the pod. It's going to be a holiday break for us. We'll be back in 2 weeks on the 30th after the Niners play Monday Night Football against the Lions. I hope that's a game where it's like Vikings fans aren't like, we need the Niners to win or we're eliminated from the division. Like, I hope it's, one of those situations where the game doesn't really matter and we still have a chance going into week 18. But it could be an all-time podcast situation where a Niners win could give the Vikings a chance at the 1 seed. So that game's going to be huge. Can't wait for that one in a couple weeks. But we're taking next week off with Christmas.
The game was so huge. Such a big game.
Before the season, you were like, oh, that could be the game of the year. Rematch of the NFC Championship, Week 17. Oh, yeah. It's just like, Jim, this is going to be a big one. Jim. No. No. But it will be a big one for us Viking fans. So
ESPN's got to be like, damn, Monday Night Football. Wow.
Yeah.
We hyped this one up.
They took a big swing with that one, and they missed. Thanks, everybody, for listening for another year of football with us. Obviously, we still got the playoffs to go, but as we're coming towards Christmas, we'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and thank you for listening and being a part of the YLT FGB family this year. We'll see you all in a couple weeks after we come back. We'll recap Week 17, go into Week 18. Hopefully the Vikes are looking at a 1 seed, and maybe, but just maybe, the Niners have some kind of miracle situation. Who knows? But Merry Christmas, everybody who listens. We'll see you all in a couple weeks with a new pod dropping on the 30th. Have a good one.